Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to my final project presentation on the Dust Bowl. My name is Kyle Huynh, and in this lesson, I'll explain to you what caused the Dust Bowl, how it affected millions of Americans during the 1930s, and why this event is still historically important today. I'll also look at how the Dust Bowl changed farming, migration, and government policies, and how historians use primary sources to understand this period. My goal is to show that the Dust Bowl wasn't just a weather disaster, it was something shaped by human decisions and environmental conditions together. What was the Dust Bowl? The Dust Bowl was a major environmental catastrophe during the Great Depression, and it especially affected the Great Plains, including Oklahoma, Texas, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. Between 1930 and 1936, the region experienced extreme drought. Without moisture, the land dried out, and when storms came, they created enormous clouds of dust that rolled across the plains. Some storms were so large they darkened the sky for hours. This era is important because it forced Americans to rethink farming, migration, and the role of the federal government during a crisis. My argument. My main argument in this lesson is that the Dust Bowl was not just a natural disaster. It was also a human-made crisis and created by poor farming practices, land misuse, and a lack of environmental planning. This disaster pushed thousands of families into poverty, caused mass migration, and forced the government to step in with new programs. The Dust Bowl changed how America deals with environmental issues and how the government responds to national emergencies. Environmental causes. First, let's look at the environmental causes. The region the region experienced one of the worst droughts in American history. Rainfall dropped dramatically, temperatures rose, and the soil lost all of its moisture. The Great Plains normally rely on deep-rooted grasses that keep the soil together, but during the 1930s, once these grasses were gone, the wind had nothing to hold the soil in place. As a result, the smallest gust could lift dirt into the air, creating these massive walls of dust. Human causes. Now, let's look at the human causes, because people played a major role. Farmers were encouraged by high wheat prices in the 1920s to plow up millions of acres. There was a belief that rain follows the plow, meaning that if you farm the land, rain will magically come. This was not true at all. Farmers used deep plowing machines that tore up the natural grasses, leaving the soil exposed. And then when the drought hit, the land was already damaged. And because of these farming practices, the natural environment simply couldn't recover. Then this photo shows the scale of these dust storms. People called them black blizzards. Some storms were so intense that people couldn't see their hands in front of their faces. Impact on farmers. The Dust Bowl had devastating effects on farmers. Crops failed year after year, which meant farmers had no income, and many lost their land entirely because they couldn't pay their mortgages. Their livestock also died because the dust contaminated food and water supplies. Families often lived in constant fear of the next storm, and the Great Depression was already hard enough, and the Dust Bowl made everything really, literally worse for America. Migration. Because of these harsh conditions, more than 300,000 people migrated west to states like California, and they were often called Okies, even if they weren't from Oklahoma. These migrants hoped to find work, but many ended up in crowded labor camps picking crops for very low wages, and they faced discrimination because local Californians feared they would take their jobs. Primary source, National Archives. Primary sources help us understand the human side of the Dust Bowl. This image from the National Archives shows a real migrant family traveling with everything they owned, and letters from this time describe the hopelessness people felt as their farms failed. And when we see these images and read these accounts, it becomes clear that the Dust Bowl wasn't just a regular thing. It was literally a lived experience full of fear, exhaustion, and resilience. Primary source, Library of Congress. The Voices from the Dust Bowl collection includes audio recordings from migrant camps where people shared stories, songs, and interviews. And listening to these voices makes the Dust Bowl feel real. People talked about missing home, struggling to feed their families, and trying to stay hopeful. But these primary sources remind us that behind every historical event are real people with emotions and experiences. Government response. The federal government stopped in through the New Deal. One major organization was the Conservation Service, which taught farmers new methods to prevent erosion. These included planting windbreaks, rotating crops, and avoiding deep plowing. This was one of the first times the government took such an active role in managing the environment and supporting farmers. The lessons learned during the Dust Bowl helped shape modern environmental regulation. Relief programs. The government also created a migrant camps to provide shelter, and they offered loans to farmers who wanted to rebuild. Federal programs hired photographers like Dorothy, Dorothy, Dorothy Lange to document the crisis. These photographs played a huge role in convincing Americans to support relief programs because they revealed the suffering people were facing. And here is Dorothy Lange right here in the photo. This photo, titled Migrant Mother, became one of the most iconic images and popular images of all time from the Dust Bowl. I even seen this personally myself, and this is my first time doing a presentation on this, but um, it shows a mother and her children living in extreme poverty and uncertainty. Images like this influence public opinion because they helped people empathize with migrant families. The photograph became a symbol of courage and hardship during the Dust Bowl. Long-term changes. The Dust Bowl led to lasting changes in American farming. New laws protected soil health, and farmers began using techniques that respected the environment, like contour plowing and planting cover crops. Why it still matters. The Dust Bowl still matters today because many of the issues we face, such as drought, climate change, and soil erosion, echo the problems of the 1930s, Dust Bowl time. By studying the Dust Bowl, we learn what happens when we overuse natural resources without thinking about long-term effects. It's a reminder that our environment is fragile and requires careful stewardship. And yeah, connecting past to present. The lessons from the Dust Bowl apply directly to modern times, just like in the 1930s. People today face environmental challenges that require cooperation between citizens and government. Understanding the Dust Bowl helps us think about sustainability, climate resilience, and the responsibility we have to protect our land. Summary. In summary, the Dust Bowl was both a natural disaster and human-made one. It caused massive migration, reshaped government policies, and led to new farming methods. Its lessons remind us of the importance of environmental responsibility, the power of federal action in times of crisis, and the resilience of the people who endured this hardship. These are my works cited. These are my five sources. And thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Hope you guys have a good day.